Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Committee on Budget and Fiscal Review. As we find ourselves in an unprecedented and historical drought, we have a package of drought relief proposals before us today, which will be presented by the Department of Finance. Two bills, AB 79, which is a budget bill with appropriations in it, and then AB 80, which provides the policy and statutory changes necessary to implement the Budget Act in AB 79. So we would like to ask Finance to join us. Good to see you again.
Good morning, Chair and members. Keely Bosler with the Department of Finance, and thank you for having us here today to present AB 79 and AB 80 that have been put together over the past month to really address this unprecedented drought and the state of emergency that the governor proclaimed on January 17th of this year. The state is facing record dry conditions. 2014 is projected to be the driest year on record. And water supplies have dipped to very low levels, with snowpack statewide averaging only about 20% of normal, and the state's reservoirs also at very low levels. And while we hope this current storm brings plenty of water and snow, it would have to rain and snow very frequently between now and May for us to even reach average levels. And this is because we're to the third year of very dry conditions, so it's really that cumulative impact of the two prior very dry years that's really causing this situation to become much more serious. And right now, conditions are present around the state that are necessitating an urgent problem and response. Some areas in the state are very close to losing drinking water supplies, and then also the agricultural sector is having to make very difficult decisions about fallowing land because the water was just not going to be available to water those crops. And then obviously with that impact on the agricultural sector, there are many communities around the state that will have significant negative impacts related to job losses. In response, the governor has formed a drought task force that involves several of the state's leading agencies on water, Department of Water Resources, the State Water Resources Control Board, the Department of Public Health, and also the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. And this task force is meeting daily and weekly on really putting together a coordinated response to the drought, and also ensuring that the state itself is taking actions also to conserve its water use. This group, the task force, has convened public forums around the state to understand better the impacts of the drought on the agricultural sector and on the communities, and also those infrastructures within the communities that are going to be so necessary in supporting food banks, providing services to those impacted negatively by the drought. And there are also many actions being taken to manage the state's water operations and to really minimize the negative impacts where possible of this very dry year. So collectively, these bills, AB 79 and 80, appropriate $687.4 million to address the drought. And I want to make clear that this is a multi-pronged effort. And there are some pieces of the bill that are very immediate and will provide immediate relief, and there are other portions of the bill that are addressing more midterm and long-term issues surrounding water use efficiency and the efficient use of the state's water resources. Specifically related to the short-term and immediate relief, there's $15 million general fund that will be available immediately for emergency drinking water systems around the state. Also, there's $1 million to augment the state's Save Our Water campaign, which we believe is a really important component of this response, really getting the word out to all Californians about how they can reduce their water usage by 20%. There's also $46 million in this bill for food and rental assistance to assist the impacted communities around the state. In terms of the midterm and longer-term actions that this bill sets in place, this includes $549 million in bond funds for projects to improve the self-reliance of regional water systems and provide monies for other multi-benefit projects. Also, $40 million from the Cap and Trade program is also being made available to increase water use efficiency and also save energy and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There's also $14 million for efforts to improve groundwater management and provide assistance for communities where the drought has really exacerbated existing groundwater contamination issues. And then also there's $2.5 million to ensure our existing water rights are enforced. The bill also, in times of emergency such as this, puts in place new penalties for illegal water diversions and provides that the Water Board can adopt emergency drought regulations. And I just want to make clear that there are no changes to propose to existing water rights laws. This is only in regard to being able to enforce illegal diversions during times of extreme drought, such as what we are in today. I'll just conclude there with saying this is a first step. Continued discussions we will be having through the budget. And we also continue to monitor this situation on the ground daily, and we will definitely be back before you as we continue to adjust and respond to the conditions that continue to unfold and change before us. And so with that, I'll just take any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Bosler. I think we probably have a few questions for you. But first and foremost, I want to thank the Department of Finance and the Governor for working with both of our houses and our legislative leaders to address so many needs that will arise currently and in the months ahead as the full impact of the drought is realized by the state. So there is an urgency to this. I think we also want to underscore, especially since we're looking forward to significant storms arriving in the next few days and through the weekend, that Californians understand that it is not a solution. In fact, it's a slight, very slight diversion from a very significant problem. We're pleased of it, better some than none. But the fact is, this is not going away anytime soon. Before we get into some of the more substantial questions that we'll have for you, please walk us through the amendments of both 79 and 80. Maybe we can get those behind us, and then we'll go on to the questions.
I might ask our expert from the State Water Board to join us, but
Sure.
I think that generally the amendments are to further restrict and ensure that violations are not issued when there is a thing called a paper violation, where somebody is just late in turning in a paper or an application, and really trying to very much narrow the penalty authority to only when there is a knowingly diversion that is illegal. And I'll ask Mr. Lawfer to expand.
So, colleagues, this is the subject of the illegal diversions section.
What page is that?
This is in AB 80. So you should have before you some copies that walk us through each of the amendments. But yes, welcome. Water Resources.
Michael Lawford, Chief Counsel for the State Water Resources Control Board. And since this is the first time that I have seen the RN actually in print, it may take me a moment to make sure that I orient myself and everybody else involved. The first two amendments appear to be simply minor amendments to correct some text in the actual bill. The first substantive amendment appears to be on page 18 and lines 36 and 37, where there is a technical amendment to strike out other than as authorized in this division and to replace it with in excess of a diverter's water rights. This was designed to, as you just heard from the Department of Finance, address some concern from water right holders that a minor technical violation of a water right permit or license that might go on for a period of time. For example, a delayed filing of a report where the water has already been diverted, but the days in which the report was delayed could somehow trigger penalties by the board of up to $2,500 per acre foot of water diverted during the entire time that report. And so this tailors the amendment so that extra additive penalty amount for the amount that's illegally diverted is tied to the actual quantities of water. The next amendment, which is Amendment 4 on page 19, striking or technical from line 34, is just designed to tailor up the emergency regulation authority that is in existing law and then was amended under AB 80 to clarify that the board, as part of these emergency regulations, cannot request additional technical reports. There are a number of concerns from stakeholders about just how expansive that could be. From some of the stakeholders, we heard that they were content and recognized the need perhaps for enhanced monitoring during times of drought because the state and local agencies need to know what's going on, what's being diverted, so that they can properly tailor their responses. The next amendment is Amendment 6 on page 21. It is, again, an amendment designed this actually just takes us back to existing law, Amendments 5 and 6 on page 21. It's an answer to this question would require an entire room of water rights attorneys, each of who would give you a slightly nuanced variation, and it simply wasn't worth trying to make this particular change, which we thought was technical. So this just reverts to existing law and the board's ability to issue cease and desist orders for individuals who are illegally diverting. The next amendment, Amendment 7, on page 22, was again designed to address some concerns from water right holders that the bill was attempting to expand the Water Board's authority beyond what's in existing law. It's not something that I think was the intent of either the administration or the leadership. And so the amendment on page 22, line 21, tailors up this whole subdivision so that the board's ability under this section of the proposed section of the Water Code, section 1846, to enforce violations of orders or regulations are tied to these emergency regulations that the board can adopt during times of drought, as well as orders that the board has adopted through its typical administrative proceedings. The references to the other sections which are now being stricken had caused some concerns among stakeholders. And so that's what you see in Amendment 7 and Amendment 8. Largely these are technical, designed to contract the legislation and more narrowly tailor it to the drought needs and remove any implication that the board was having expanded authority.
Thank you, Mr. Lawford. And so that's with regard to AB 80, and there's some amendments to AB 79 as well.
Yes, Matt Alme, Department of Finance. The first amendment is in the California Conservation Corps item, and it's just to clarify that the activities funded from the $13 million.
Is page 14?
Yes. Actually, I have it on page 8.
Okay.
Of the $13 million available to the Corps, the existing language is for the Corps to employ veterans and unemployed young adults. There's just a clarification that it also include to employ formerly incarcerated individuals as well. Right. So again, just a clarification. And then the last one is on page 14, which you just alluded to. This is a technical amendment to Provision 3, which identifies $33 million available for flood management projects. The amendment is to reduce that down to $50,000, which ties to Schedule 28, which you could see above, where you see the amendment is only 500,000, not 33 million. So it memorializes what the actual dollar value is in Schedule 28.
Okay, clear enough. Colleagues, we might have trouble following. You may be looking at the SB version as opposed to the AB version.
Oh,
Same amendment, same copy, same everything, just different pages and lines. So that's if anyone's confused. So thank you, Mr. Olney, for that. And did we have questions just on the amendments? Otherwise, we'll get to the bills themselves. Yes, Senator Nielsen.
Mr. Chairman, well, first of all, at least 80 represents huge change in water policy in the state of California. And these amendments, as I briefly understand them, do not in any way assuage my concerns. It's almost breathtaking change to long-established settled policy. And in fact, some of this, to my recollection, was rejected in 2009 in the new water plan that we negotiated then. It was summarily rejected in the conference committee in the legislature. And these particular amendments were available at 6:10, at least that's what our document says, and we just got them. In fact, the board has said they've just now got to look at them. With such tremendous change in water policy in the state of California, and according an entity of government, such enormous authorities, this deserves a lot more deliberation and a lot more public input. I mean, what stakeholders out there know what's going on here today? I don't think any. I hope maybe somebody's out here that will comment, but Mr. Chairman, this is just too hasty a process for me, and I do not find comfort that these probably slightly reduce some of the concerns that I have. But the original language attacked the pre-1914 water rights. Nobody's safe, and it accords enormous powers to the Water Resources Control Board in terms of fining. This deserves an awful lot more of public scrutiny and attention.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen. That's what we are here for, and I know that there will be people who are awaiting to share their thoughts during public comment. In the meantime, given the urgency of the situation, how are we going to expedite getting the funding to the programs proposed in the legislation, and specifically for local projects?
Yes. So, in terms of the response to the impacted communities, the food assistance and the rental assistance, we are currently up and down the state doing different workshops to understand exactly where the impacts are occurring. And we are also in a contract with UC Davis, who is going to be doing a more detailed study of exactly over the not too detailed, because it's all going to be happening over the next few weeks, to really understand the localized areas of the state that are going to be the most impacted by the shortage of water and the impacts that are ensuing. So. Those are pieces of information that we're going to be utilizing to inform our response. But every day we're working on ensuring that a coordinated response is rolled out to communities that are being impacted, and so we will work expeditiously to ensure that those services are delivered where needed.
And maybe we should back up just a little bit. Can you describe to us who and how will be making the determination as to which communities are drought impacted, making them eligible for these relief dollars? And will it be done by county or communities within counties?
So we're still working on pinpointing exactly the regions that are going to be the impacted.
And it is OES that will be making the determinations?
It's actually the Drought Task Force, and that includes the Department of Food and Ag, but OES, and DWR and the State Water Resources Control Board. So everyone, and also Department of Social Services as well. So everybody brings different expertise to the table, and we're really working across agencies to ensure that all the information is collected and then deployed and to address the impacts. We are planning to utilize the network existing network of local providers. In some cases, this is local counties. Some cases, it's other government entities. In some cases, it's nonprofits, migrant centers, to get the services and food to the affected communities. And so it won't be driven specifically from Sacramento, but we'll be utilizing the existing network on the ground of food banks that really know how to serve these communities effectively. So once we make a determination about where, then we will be deploying our resources to support the local distribution networks that already exist today.
So clearly, the agricultural communities through the Central Valley and other parts of the state are hurting already. A lot of people put out of work. So organizations that have some experience working with farm workers, for example, will have greater access to the dollars. I'm not sure how the eligibility works.
Because every community has a slightly different array of local service providers, we'll be really working to tailor the distribution of the programs depending on what's available on the ground. And in some cases, there may be a greater role for the state in other areas where there are existing nonprofits that know these communities and do a lot to serve them already. We will be tapping into those resources. Actually, our California Volunteers organization is going around and really talking to all of the different organizations around the state to get a better sense of what their capacity is and understand how we at the state level can support them in delivering these services as effectively as possible. And
we would appreciate it if, as greater clarity is determined in the coming weeks, and I know we're all moving very quickly on this for obvious reasons, that you could be prepared to report back to our Budget Subcommittee 2, which will be hearing this in greater depth on March 27th.
We would be happy to do that, and we'll be monitoring it.
Great. Senator Monning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the Finance Department and others. And clearly, notwithstanding today's rain, the drought is crisis in proportion, and while the governor has acted with other leaders to establish the task force and to mobilize these resources, I think there's still kind of an under-awareness statewide that the far-reaching impacts of the drought. The district I represent, there's some water districts that are already projecting running out of water as soon as the end of this month, June, July, some other water districts. So my question goes to the allocation of $15 million for alternative water supplies and public water system improvements. And maybe there's another category that I'm missing, but I'm concerned about people that run out of water and how, if it is this $15 million line item, how that amount was reached, because throughout the Central Valley, areas of the Central California, throughout the state, as water users on different systems, some on well systems, that as those wells have been depleted, the concentration of toxics also goes up, and a system that may be safe drinking water at normal levels becomes a toxic well and not suitable for drinking water, for potable water. I don't know how you calculate this. $15 million to me seems potentially low. If I know in some of the communities I represent, Chular, not because of drought but because of contaminated water, was dependent on 5-gallon bottles of water being trucked in at tremendous expense. So help me understand how the projections of $15 million, and have you identified specific regions in the state or water districts that are at greatest risk right now of running out of drinking water?
And the answer is yes. This is definitely at the forefront of what the drought task force is addressing. Is really ensuring that all Californians have safe drinking water. And we have identified 10 communities statewide that are on kind of a critical watch list, and we continue to monitor that list and update it as we get additional information. And I do think the $15 million, which is it's $15 million more than is regularly available. So this is quite a big increase. But we don't know for sure if it's enough. I think I can say that with some certainty. But that's why we just are going to continue to monitor this, and if we find that that's not a sufficient amount to address the issues, then we will be back before you. But it's a significant increase over what we have today. And because in reaction to what we're seeing on the ground, including I think two communities in Monterey.
Right. Thank you. And also Santa Cruz County, the Lompico Water District is, I think, just successfully doing a tie line with the San Lorenzo Valley Water District that provides some immediate relief. Can you provide us with a list of those districts or communities that you've identified? If not immediately this morning as follow-up, just so that all of us have a sense of those districts that have been identified as the most at risk, so that we can compare that to what we're hearing from our communities. That would be helpful.
Yes. I don't have that list right in front of me, but I probably have it somewhere in my materials here, so we will get back to you on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bonnie. And I think you raise a couple of interesting points. Number one, not unlike other natural disasters, there's no consistency with how the impacts arrive in different districts, in different parts of the state, and even within certain counties. So we've got to keep a real eye on where the need is greatest. Also, I think it's quite obvious, given the great demand, any number of these line items, whether it's the $15 million for alternative water supplies that you've raised, or the $4 million to secure emergency drinking water, or the $7 million for grants to small and severely disadvantaged communities, they all seem rather minimal. But I think we should recognize this is a first step. It's just the beginning. I'm sure we will be back during the coming months as we see how severe the impact of the drought is to be appropriating more money. This is just the beginning. Senator Corbett and then Senator Hancock.
Thank you, Senator Leno. I'd also like to associate myself with the concerns raised by Senator Monning. Obviously, clean drinking water should be a very, very high priority during this emergency situation. I have some questions with regard to the food assistance, and obviously, again, the priority there should be communities that are impacted severely by the loss of employment as a result of the drought, and ensuring that food is provided. I've had some questions already from people in my community with regard to the cost of food. Obviously, the drought will be driving the cost of crops, cattle, dairy cattle, feed, all those sorts of things will be impacted. Are there programs within the food assistance to help assist in situations for people who are on fixed incomes and on assistance? Are we thinking about that as we sort of survey what the needs are going to be as a result of the drought?
You make a very good point about the costs of food. This proposal, though, is really providing additional monies for the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which is, providing, it's outside of the food stamp, the CalFresh program. And this is money money and resources to provide food in targeted communities that are the most impacted. But I think a short answer is we're not necessarily addressing the inflationary costs, inflationary effects related to the drought on food supply, and nor have we done any work at this point to quantify that, but something I'm sure we will be monitoring.
Okay, thank you very much. And with regard to the survey by the task force to determine where the greatest needs are throughout the various agricultural regions of the state, obviously, we have some very large agricultural regions, traditional regions of agriculture. Will we also be surveying some of the other sort of pocket areas of agriculture? I know in my Tri-Valley area of my district, there may be impacts. Water is drawn from the California Water Project for the various water systems in that area, and they've already been, the supply has already been decreased by the state's announcement. So I'm just wondering how we will survey where all the needs will be.
And I think that's one of the challenges with this drought that we haven't seen in recent years, where they've been much more localized. This is a drought that's affecting a lot of the areas in Northern California. I would never have thought that Mendocino County would have been the first place where we would see low drinking water supplies. So I think we have a multi-pronged effort to collect this information. We're utilizing the UC Davis expertise to do a survey and study, and we're gathering all of this information from different pieces to try and make sure that the response is appropriate and targeted in the areas that do need it the most. So I think we're doing our best to collect all the information.
Thank you. And then I have one last, just very technical question with regard to the amendments and the fines for diversion of water. Since they're going to be based on volume of water diversions, how is that measured? How does one measure the 1 acre-foot of diversion? And who will be measuring?
Once again, this is Michael Loffer with the State Water Resources Control Board. There are a variety of ways that the Water Board can obtain information to determine what the actual amount of water diverted was. Sometimes we have, and it's not uniform throughout the state, rather sophisticated measuring gauges that are at the actual diversion points. But if that's not available, there are other tools, forensic tools available. I mean, they're everything from how often a pump might have been running to divert water from an ag drain into irrigate a crop, or with the urban water users, another area of key concern, those are fairly well metered out so that it would be capable of the Water Board using information from the Department of Water Resources or the local districts to obtain the information as to how much water was illegally diverted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Colleagues, we're going to take a moment to establish our quorum. If you could call the roll, please.
Leno?
Here.
Nielsen? Here. Anderson? Bell? Here. Berryhill? Block? Corbett? Hancock? Here. Jackson? Here. Mitchell? Here. Monning? Here. Roth? Here. Torres? Walters? Wright? Wyland? We have a quorum.
We have a quorum. Thank you, colleagues. We have Senators Hancock, then Jackson, and Roth.